Welcome in to the TGI Friday edition of the Fun Astrology Podcast. We're going to set up a very historic day for tomorrow, and I'm going to tell you why here through this episode. Thanks for listening. Thomas Miller here. Welcome in today, and we're going to take a look back in order to project forward. The Robert Glasscock Horary Practicum sign-ups continue. They're absolutely free. Go to the top of funastrology.com. That's all we're going to say about it today. Just register if you'd like to attend. And thank you to all of you who have registered so far. All right, tomorrow morning, the big first event is the Sun conjoining Pluto. Where I am, it's at 8:46 in the morning, Eastern. You'll have to convert to your own time zone. And this is going to be such a special little sequence in the morning. I would just say make your favorite morning beverage, get on a yoga mat, and just experience this. Experience it meditatively, because this is big. So the Sun conjoins Pluto at 29 degrees 59 minutes. And boy, the symbolism of this could not just continue to be so clear. In my chart, where I am, that is going to happen in the 12th house of completions, endings, resetting, karmic completion. Hold that theme in mind as we continue through this. Then the moon next enters Gemini. So let's don't do this once. Let's have plurality about it. That's at 8:57. So you just keep right on going. Refill your coffee or your tea. For 9:07, the Sun enters Aquarius. So if you stay on your mat through this, you've got a good 30-45-minute meditation that is just going to be spectacular. Then at 7:50 p.m. Eastern that evening, Pluto follows suit and enters Aquarius. Keep in mind, this is not the final time. That will be in November. It comes back out in September for about 6 weeks. But then when we hit November, it will not return again for a long, long time. And yes, the Sun entering Aquarius certainly affects us on a short-term basis, but on a longer-term basis, the drumbeat is Pluto. There's been a lot of prognostication of what this is going to look like. We're in the age of AI. We're in the age of digital influence in our lives. Some would say interference in our lives. We're in a national debt crisis we don't know about yet. We're funding 2 foreign wars right now. I'm saying we, the United States, other countries as well. We are split right down the middle, Gemini, and I don't need to continue elaborating on this list, but I wanted to say it just for this. Keep all of that in mind. As you see the world today, keep your perspective on the world as you listen to this. The history of Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. I went back twice because the second time back caught my eye. It was 1532. Now, you know, I've talked a lot about the Saturn and Pluto conjunctions in Capricorn, working our way back. One of those occurred on 1518. That was at Capricorn 4 degrees. Well, here at 1532, Pluto enters Aquarius. Was like, wonder what that panned out like. So I went back and brushed up some history. The 15 and 1600s, I found this one quote, was an age of absolute monarchy in Europe, unlimited power and divine right, quote unquote. Now remember, just listen to this and compare it to what you see today. In 1534, England broke away from the authority of the Catholic Church. There was the impact of Martin Luther 20 years before. That happened under King Henry VIII, so we had spiritual reform. In the late 1500s, following the ingress, Shakespeare appeared on the scene. We had literary reform. But it's the next one, the one previous to this one, that I wanted to focus on the most, because it happened between 1777 and just like now, it danced its way into Aquarius over about the year-and-a-half time frame from the spring of 1777 until December 1st, 1778. So there was the lock-on right there, just like we're experiencing now. And it lasted until 1797. Well, in the United States, obviously, the Revolutionary War had already begun. It started in 1775, 2 years before the ingress first began, and it lasted for 8 years until 1783. You had the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and then a long string of couple of decades of firsts for the United States. The first president, the first post office, the first bank, etc., as this new nation emerged. So you can almost feel the energy of that as the United States over here was coming up out of the ground. Look at what was happening in France. And this is what I really wanted to focus on, because on the back end of this ingress, the French Revolution began. Started in 1789, and that was the year that George Washington was elected president. But if you wanted to do some research on this, you could start with Wikipedia. That's where I began. And I just wanted to read a couple of things here that I saw and let you draw the conclusions of what Pluto in Aquarius could look like. We've got 20 years to figure this out. So it says from Wikipedia, the French Revolution, the next 3 years were dominated by the struggle for political control. Exacerbated by economic depression. 1793, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette executed. The Reign of Terror begins in France. Now here are just some one-sentence or so excerpts that I pulled. The revolution was the result of multiple long and short-term factors that culminated in a social, economic, financial, and political crisis in the late 1780s. Combined with resistance to reform by the ruling elite, the indecisive policy by Louis XVI and his ministers, the state was unable to manage the crisis. In 1715 and 1789, the population had grown substantially. You can't make this stuff up, folks. And as a result, earnings and income was imbalanced, and increasing equality led to more social conflict. The state also experienced a debt crisis. Why? Excessive spending by the monarch, funding the American Revolutionary War, and an unfair and unbalanced tax system. I pulled more, but I'm not going to read it. You can go on and just research this if you'd like to dig deeper. But it all ended in 1799 when Napoleon staged a coup. And I just thought, we live in such a different world today, and yet we don't. And the ominousness of history repeats itself, and those who don't learn from the past are assured to repeat it. So here we are. Astrology shows us the cycle. We are committed to living on our highest timeline. So what do we do? How do we play this card? Well, one thing is, don't be surprised by the headlines. And when you become part of the news story, you have to believe that the changes that are being applied to you, it is for the purpose of cleaning stuff out so that you can experience the new without the old being dragged along. Last week, a very good friend let me know that his employer had told him that they would be separating soon. He got a very fair package, but it was a separation. The next day, the next morning, I received an email similarly clearing out something that was to be moved out in my life. I haven't talked about it publicly yet, but certainly just know I'm experiencing this too. If you're feeling it, if you've had it happen, so have I. Big time. This was as epic of a shift as I could possibly have received. My friend is very aware of everything that we talk about here on this podcast. He's a listener of this podcast and more. And neither of us were surprised. Oh, you sit in the moment, but you move on very quickly because you realize what's happening. Pluto is leaving Capricorn. We are leaving old stodgy things that don't serve our future behind. So if it happens, be thankful for it, that it's cleaning out your closet so that you can fill it up with new things. You can be available for service in this new front. That's the purpose of the cleaning out. The other thing I think that would position us well for the next 20 years is to learn skills and value-add contributions that you can make into the new changes. That might be on a work front, so realize if AI is coming, what's going to be the impact of that? Could that hit you professionally? If so, what do you need to do to adjust? Think about audiobook narration, like something I've been doing for the last over 10 years. There will come a time when I can speak a few sentences into a software program, put the copy of the book in there, and it will spit out the audiobook in my voice with perfect inflections. I think that's coming. It's already affected audiobook narration in general. So what does that mean? Well, one thing it means that one thing that will never go away. You can replicate any voice. You could take a book and have Morgan Freeman read it instantly. That's coming. But an author reading her or his own book, that's going to be around for a while. So I'm making a shift. I'll be doing a lot of my own work now instead of so much for others, starting now to work that in. Your contribution might be on the spiritual front, learning things like astrology that might likely be in demand in the future. So you basically put a vertical line right down the middle of your consciousness. And on the left side of that line, as you imagine this, out with the old, and on the right side of the line, you know where I'm going, in with the new. As you watch all the fighting and arguing and bickering and division and Gemini stuff divided around the left side of that line, just let that go. Don't get caught up in it. Focus on the right side of the line of how you can be positioning yourself your very best. That's why we started a service called High Timeline Books. HighTimelineLiving.com also gets you there. And it ultimately is under High Timeline Publishing, things that will give you instant access to things that can boost your spirits. That's where I'm positioning to stay on the right side of that vertical line. And there will be plenty of astrology to guide us along the way. We'll have exactly what we need at the right moments. It's already baked in. It's just we have to live our way up to it, right? Okay, well, we exceeded our normal time band, but this exceeds the normal aspects. So I hope that helps frame it up of what it's going to be. Just keep that line in your mind. That will get us all through and start positioning yourself on the high side. I love you so much. Have a great weekend. I'm expecting to be doing Ray tomorrow, and then Kristen and Alyssa are doing Level Up on Sunday night. I'm traveling, and I will see you from California next week.